ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to look at Unit 3, the beginning, and this section is called Introduction to Inequalities. Your learning goals for today: I can write and graph inequalities. Now, you're probably asking me, what is an inequality, Miss Marsh? Well, an inequality is unlike an equation. An inequality does not have one solution. It has a range of solutions that it covers. You've seen inequality symbols before. You just weren't exactly probably sure of the name inequality. So less than looked like this. It was an L that's been kind of crooked. Okay, so that's a less than symbol. A greater than is a backwards L. Less than is less than or equal to is less than, but it has an equal sign. So it kind of looks like it's an equal sign, but it has the L on top, okay? Greater than is greater than or equal to, is the greater than sign with a line underneath for equal to. So those are the symbols we're going to want to make sure we know off the top of our head coming forward. Identifying solutions. So a solution to an inequality is any number that makes the inequality true. So let's try these two solutions and see if they work. So I have 2x plus 1 is greater than negative 3. So if I plug in negative 3 in for x, I want to know, does it work? So I'm going to do 2 times negative 3 plus 1 is greater than negative 3. So I'm going to get negative 6 plus 1. Negative 5 is greater than negative 3. Negative 5 is not greater than negative 3. So not a solution. Okay, let's try negative 1 now. 2 times negative 1 plus 1 is greater than negative 3. I get negative 2 plus 1 is greater than negative 3. Or negative 1 is greater than negative 3. Now, you may be saying, well, that's not the case. It actually is. Negative 1 is greater than negative 3. Think about it. I'd rather owe someone $1 than $3. So, this is a solution. Now, also unlike equations, we're also going to graph our solutions on a number line with an inequality. There are two kinds of questions we're going to ask ourselves whenever we graph one. What kind of dot on the number? So either we're going to have a closed dot or an open dot. What a closed dot basically is a dot, a circle with it filled in, colored in. You're going to use that dot when you either have a greater or less than or equal to, or a greater than or equal to. So when it's equal to, you need to close up your dot. Here's how I remember this. There's two pieces to my inequality symbol. I have the arrow and the line. So there's two pieces to my dot. Draw it and fill it in. Open dot is basically an open circle. It's a circle that's not filled in. You can probably guess when you're going to use that. That's a less than or a greater than. So one thing on my inequality sign, only one thing. Gotta just draw my dot. Then you're going to ask yourself, which way do I shade? To do that, you're going to look at your answer. And I'll show you when we do some problems here. So let's graph a few solutions. So I'm given 2 is greater than or equal to A. That's really confusing. I don't like when the number's on the left-hand side. I like when the variable's on the left. So what you need to do is flip-flop. So if I flip-flop the A and the 2 around, I need to flip-flop the sign around as well. So notice how I originally was pointing at the A. I still need to be pointing at the A if I flip-flop the A and the 2 around, okay? So now I have A is less than or equal to 2. So first thing to do, I'm going to put my numbers on my number line. So 2 is going to go in the middle, my number. And I'm going to put one number smaller than it on the left and one number bigger than it on the right. You can go further and you can put numbers on every single line. I just feel it's easy just to put one over there and one over there. It's a lot simpler and not as time consuming. Now, here comes our two questions. What kind of dot at 2? Am I going to have a closed dot or an open dot? So I'm going to look at my sign. It is less than or equal to. So if it's equal to, I'm going to have to do 2 parts to the dot. So draw it and fill it in. Now, let's figure out. Am I going to shade to the left or to the right. So A has to be less than or equal to 2. So is 1 less than 2 or is 3 less than 2? 1 is, right? So I got a shade on this side of my dot because all solutions on this side work, such as 0, -1, but I know 5 is not less than 2, so I can't shade on this side of my dot. Let's try it again. X is greater than -4. So my variable's on the left. Don't have to flip-flop, but I do have -4 there. And then I gotta put my numbers around it. Well, one smaller than -4 would be -5, right? Because if I owe $4, one less than that is owing $5. But one greater than that is owing only $3. So I have labeled my line. Now, what kind of dot at -4? Open or closed? It's going to be open, right? Because it's only greater than, not equal to, no line underneath. Which way am I going to shade? Is -5 greater than -4 or is -3 greater than -4? -3 is. So I'm going to shade on this side. Notice how the arrow of your inequality points to the way you shade. As long as the variable is on the left, that is an accurate thing you can always look at. So look at our top first one. After I flipped it, my inequality went the same way as my shading. That always happens actually. So I have C is less than 0. I have 0 in the middle. Let's put a number on each side. -1 and a 1. What kind of dot at 0? Open dot, right? So I'm going to put an open dot there. And then my arrow points off to the left. Let's make sure. Is -1 less than 0 or is 1 less than 0? -1 is less than 0. So I'm going to shade off to the left. Now, let's see if we can go backwards. I'm going to give you a graph, and then we're going to write the inequality. So what would be the graph, or the inequality for this? Well, I could pick my variable. It's x, excuse me. And that's I could pick any letter I wanted. I just picked x. I know my number's -1, because that's where my dot is. Now, what kind of sign am I going to have? Is it going to be an equal to or a not equal to? It's going to be an equal to, right? It's a closed dot. But now, what about, is it going to be a less than or a greater than? Let's look. Well, I'm going to 1 to 2. Well, 2 is greater than -1, right? 2 is bigger. So it looks like x has to be greater than or equal to -1. Right? Because my numbers are bigger than the -1, so I have to have a greater than symbol. And I know it's equal to because there's a closed dot. Let's try this one. So I'm at x, and I know my number's 4. Let's see here. Am I going smaller or am I going bigger? Well, smaller than 4 is 1, so I am going smaller. Am I equal to, though? No, because my dot is not closed, right? So I have x is less than 4 for that inequality. Now, let's also look at some inequalities that happen in real life. Have you ever seen when you've been in a restaurant or even a store of any kind and you see that the seating capacity is 100 and something people? Well, that's by fire code. You can only have so many people in a room, otherwise you can't safely exit if a fire would all of a sudden occur. So we have here, a restaurant can seat at most 172 people. So I know x and 172 has to be in there. But what does at most mean? Does that mean I can put more than 172 people in that restaurant or less than 172 people? I can only put less than 172 people, right? Can I have on the dot 172? Like 172, is that okay? I can, right? So x is less than or equal to 172 people. Let's try the next one. A person must be at least 35 years old to be elected president of the U.S. So I have x and I have 35. Now, which inequality symbol am I going to have? Am I going to have a greater than or a less than? So if it would be less than, then I could have, that would mean a 15-year-old could be president. No. Above 35. At least 35. They have to be 35, but they can be older, just not younger. So X has to be greater than 35. But can they also be 35? They can. So X is greater than or equal to 35 years old. Let's try the last one. You must be at least 18 to vote in an election. So I got X and I got 18. At least. So that means you can't be 15, right? So X has to be greater than, and you can also be 18 to vote, so equal to. X is greater than or equal to 18 years old. And that's the end of the video. See you later, Sabers.